Alright guys, so today we're going to do things a little bit different. Now I know I normally talk about headphones and earbuds on the channel, but I've realized I've never really talked about how I got into music and like what all I actually listen to and what I actually listen to music with. I mean, I get asked these type of questions all the time. Music has always just kind of grabbed me, and I think that's why I don't listen to one specific genre, because it could be something that's like easy listening, something soft, and it could be somebody's voice. Or it could be something like metal or hardcore, and it could be a certain riff or something that just grabs me at the time. So my taste in music is just all over the place. There's not one genre that I listen to. And really, it started way back. We lived with a friend of mine when I was in elementary school while our house was being built, and he was a huge Michael Jackson fan. And I mean huge, like Jackson 5 stuff all the way to when he went to his solo career. He had everything on cassette tape. And at the time, cassette tapes were like the way to listen to music. And I kind of missed that because cassette tapes made it where you really had to listen to an album as a whole. So I got to where I was listening to Off the Wall and Thriller and Bad. And when you start to listen to albums, you know like what song comes next before the song is over that you're listening to at the time. So I got to where I appreciated albums because it felt like albums were laid out just in a certain way. Like one track belonged behind a certain track for a reason. And so, you know, going through that and listening to MJ, I got to where I really enjoyed harmonies. So about the early 90s, I became a huge fan of people like Boyz II Men, certain R&B groups that did a lot of this. But I also found that around 94, I really got into the grunge era. This is Nirvana, Bush, Stone Temple Pilots, Soundgarden, Silverchair, and bands like that. But I also really enjoyed hip hop at that time as well. I mean, we had Tupac, we had Bone Thugs and Harmony, Outkast, because I'm from the South, so, you know, Outkast is from the same state that I'm in, and it was just something different. So anyway, about this time, again, like I said, it was cassette tapes, but then CDs started to come into play. I was walking through the mall here locally, and in front of a Radio Shack, there was a portable CD player that was hooked up to two speakers, and it was playing a Gloria Estefan album, I don't remember which one, and it just sounded incredible. Just the sound quality coming out of having the ability to play a CD wherever you wanted to go. You could plug headphones into it. You can plug these speakers into it. I don't know. It blew my mind. So I knew at that point I wanted a portable CD player. That was what I wanted. And when my birthday came around, I got my first portable CD player. Now, when portable CD players first came out, although they're labeled as portable, you pretty much had to sit them on something flat. If it was slightly curved or you picked it up to move it or anything like that, it picked up every little bump. The CD would skip. It just wasn't as portable as it was made out to be. It didn't matter though. That was like my favorite gift. And I started listening to CDs. In fact, the first CDs that I got that my parents gave me, and I don't know if they found it in like a bargain bin, because it wasn't, you know, necessarily artists that I was listening to at the time, but I remember getting a U2 album. It was Joshua Tree. There was an Eagles album. There was a Paula Abdul album. So it just, the range was all over the place. But because that's what I had, that was what I listened to over and over and over again. And I just began to appreciate, again, how an album was laid out. It was just fun to listen to a song and just know what was coming next. And there's just that anticipation. But then obviously with CDs, you could skip around. And but I became obsessed with CDs to the point that I kind of started collecting them. Again, I listened to everything, so my CD collection was all over the place. But I really couldn't afford CDs in the manner that I wanted them. So when an album would come out, I would actually go to the local record store because they had listening stations. You could put headphones on and listen to songs on the album. You could even skip through them. I just visited the record store all the time. And I went there so much that the guy actually offered me a job. So I worked there. In fact, I worked there for 4 years. In fact, I became the manager of the store. And when you work in a record store and you work around music all the time, the people that come in that are asking about music, they're recommending music, you end up checking out a lot of stuff that you may not necessarily normally check out. So I was listening to all different kinds of artists, and I just got hooked again on all different kind of genres, ranging at that time from like punk, pop punk to again metal. Even at this time, this is when I started to get into Metallica. And the first album I actually got into them is the one that most people wouldn't even think of, and that was Load. It was just something that grabbed me about them. It wasn't like the heavy thrash style of Metallica, but it was a different side that grabbed me because it would fit kind of what I was listening to at the time. So in my obsessive way of listening to music, I start to find an artist, then I want to hear everything from them. So I go back and start listening to their earlier stuff, like the first album, and just everything that I can get my hands on. And I fell in love with Metallica, like the thrash stuff, the softer stuff, the more mainstream stuff from the Black Album. When that came out in the early 90s, I just loved everything from them. And the reason I'm mentioning this is this kind of led me to watching this documentary that they released called A Year and a Half in the Life of Metallica. And it's basically the recording of the Black Album. It shows them in the studio. It shows them working on all different elements of that album. And I became so interested in how this process worked. I mean, just hearing vocals be recorded separately from everything else, hearing different layers in songs, and it blew my mind. So the reason I'm bringing this up is I think this is what led me to want to start a record label. I wanted to be a part of the process of working on an album, helping out bands, especially local bands. So I started a record label called Still Movement Records. Now, this record label didn't last long, and it really did just kind of deal with some local bands. But I did end up working with some bands that actually made it. You may have heard of Mayday Parade or A Day to Remember, and there's several different bands that were on a compilation that I released. And it was just kind of cool to work with these bands and to see that, you know, they were struggling, but they were making such incredible music that nobody was listening to. Nobody would hear because there was so many bands. Just because you weren't marketed a certain way, you would never hear from them. And I also think this is why it kind of leads into why I talk about a lot of products that aren't always mainstream products. I like for the underdogs or for companies that are actually putting out good stuff, just because they're not as marketed as Beats or Apple or Sony and brands like that. I still think there's some incredible stuff out there that just kind of flies under the radars. What really got me started in headphones, and this is kind of funny, is I was in Best Buy and the Beats by Dre, the original studio Beats by Dre, were just released, and they had a listening station. I put the headphones on my head. They were turned on because these were battery powered, and the isolation, just the immediate blocking out the noise of everything else in the store and being able to hear the music just opened my eyes up to what headphones could actually do. And so I got the pair of Beats, I listened to them, I started looking up and researching all kind of stuff. Again, this might be the obsessive side of me of, you know, finding out what could be better out there. And I realized there's so many different kinds of headphones. I started looking at all different kind of studio headphones. And at the time, the Audio-Technica M50s were the ones that were like recommended by everybody. So I got those. And then I got the Bear Dynamics. But it became so fun to check out a new pair of headphones because you could listen to music in one pair of headphones and then put on a completely different pair of headphones, listening to the exact same album, and they could sound different. Like the vocalists could sound different in one pair than it did the other. Or the instrument stood out a little bit more in this pair than it did this pair. And I'm a huge fan of bass, so if a pair of headphones can make you feel, like really feel the impact of bass, those pairs tend to stand out to me a little bit more than some of the other ones did. So I was kind of drawn to those pairs a little bit more than the ones that had like a flatter, just dull, reference style sound. And so I became obsessed. I tried all different kind of headphones, and I started to think, well, what if I just started talking about these headphones? Maybe to where companies might send products for me to check out instead of me trying to buy these headphones. And because I've tried so many, it might be nice to just talk to people that are also interested in headphones. And that's really kind of how the channel got started, or at least where it took off. In fact, a lot of my earlier stuff was like Skull Candy headphones and Turtle Beach headsets. I was really focused in at the time on gaming headsets, and it just kept building and building. And then true wireless earbuds came out, and I was one of the first to kind of, talk about true wireless earbuds. And at the time, it was a newer type of technology, and a lot of people started to watch at that time. And especially when phones were releasing, and they were releasing with no headphone jack, a lot of people were kind of being pushed to buy true wireless earbuds. So the channel kept kind of growing based off of that. And as much as I love true wireless earbuds and Bluetooth headphones because of the freedom that you get and the convenience, I still, even to this day, think wired headphones and wired speakers, everything being plugged in is still the way that you want to listen to music. And so that leads me to how I enjoy music the most now. Now, I still use, true wireless earbuds and headphones because of their convenience. But I love listening to vinyl records, and I love listening to them sitting in my office, plugged into speakers. Although my turntable that I use, which is the Angel's Horn, I don't know the specific model. I will link it in the description. It's the one that's made out of walnut. It has a belt drive, and it also has an adjustable counterweight. So you can actually weigh it where you have the needle touching the record exactly the way that you want to. And the record player that I use is also Bluetooth capable, but I don't use it, Bluetooth, because I still think plugging it in wired gives you a more analog feel. I like to be able to hear all the little cracks and pops once the needle hits the record. There's something about it that just gives it that feel of how it was intended to be heard. I mean, you're hearing little subtle things, just things like imperfections, and you don't feel like you're hearing something that's compressed or just overly digital. And again, this is just my favorite way to listen to things. I know I talk about music all the time, and I talk about headphones and earbuds and things like that. But again, I don't really share, or I haven't shared, why I enjoy music so much. I mean, I've gone through a lot of different things in my life, and I know this kind of sounds cheesy or generic, but I really don't know where I would be if it weren't for music. I use music as an escape. So to be able to have this channel, to be able to talk about like audio related products, it's kind of special. It's special because I know you guys are into audio, that you keep coming back, checking out earbuds and headphone videos. For you guys that has stuck around throughout all of the years of the channel, for you guys that's actually stuck around to this point in the video, because I know I've just been rambling, I can't thank you enough. So thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Thank you so much for checking out all the other videos. And as always, make sure to stay tuned for more.